What's up, guys? Alan Bishop with the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute. I'm not even going to give you the tagline today because I'm tired of saying it. I'm going to have to come up with a different one. But you know what we're here for. We're here to talk about distillation. We're pretty much always going to be here to talk about distillation or something related to the art of distillation. Sometimes brewing or winemaking as well, but much less so. I will tell you guys, though, I am planning on doing some short videos for the channel. I built me a little 3-gallon copper kettle to make quote-unquote small beers with, and by small beers I mean low alcohol, low ABV, anywhere between 0.05% up to maybe 3 or 4% alcohol beers, specifically ginger beer, but also some others that'll be coming up that are historic, and we'll record those videos, give you guys recipes and all that stuff, because that stuff is incredibly good for you. It's good for your gut health, it's good for your biome, it's got active yeast in it still and all that stuff, and you only make about a gallon of it at a time. You got 2 adults in the house, and you can go through a gallon of it in a week. Whatever you don't go through, you set it aside, put it in a carboy, fortify it with something, and hold on to it until you have time to run it through the still, right? So, all right. All that being said, reach out to me at bishopshomegrown@gmail.com, any of my social media, the YouTube comments below, and go to thealchemistcabinet.com for links to Distillers Talk podcast, to our paranormal podcast, myself and my wife, Kimberly Marie Bishop. If you have ghosts, you have everything, as well as our store, which supports, obviously, our family, as well as this channel. That is on thealchemistcabinet.com. It's the Warehouse One, I believe, is what my wife has named it. So, another viewer question here today. So, Alan, I was tasting some of my spirits on oak and their white dog equivalents. It's always a good comparison, right? To see what's going on. I'm wondering if you have experience with having over-oaked a spirit and diluted it with its white dog equivalent to neutralize or subtle the oak. Always looking for a trick to put in the wheelhouse. Cheers, Dustin Shepard. And this is a good question because I am about to be doing a video on what to look for when you're buying a barrel, because I don't know that a lot of home distillers really in-depth know what they might need to know about finding a barrel, as well as what's the difference between using wood chips and a barrel, and a way that you might want to approach oaking with wood chips. But to answer your question, Dustin, so I have done that before. Not commonly, but I do every once in a while. So I tend to be pretty picky when it comes to the way that I mature my spirits. Obviously I have over-oaked things before, and sometimes it's just been bad enough that I've just had to redistill it and use it for something else, one way or the other. There have been times, though, I've been able to add some of the original character of that raw distillate back into it by blending in small amounts and getting back to something that I would really like to have, right? It's a little harder to figure out your maturation process when you're using wood chips or small barrels or something of that nature, where the surface area is so much larger than it would be in a 53-gallon bourbon barrel. Pretty easy to go the wrong direction, and qualitatively, some of those wood products, whether they be small barrels or whether they be wood chips, etc., they probably don't live up to what they should as far as quality goes sometimes, so it's easy to mess that up. Although there's nothing wrong with blending those things back, and what I often do, we'll get some of the little 1 milliliter, 0.5 milliliter pipettes, and we'll make blends. We'll take a little bit of our brown spirit, we'll take a little bit of our white spirit, figure out what the percentage is to get it where we want it at before we blend it all back together. It's always nice to be able to taste through those things, smell through those things before you just start pouring shit together, and then all of a sudden now, all right, well, we didn't make it any better, and we might have made it worse, and then now you got to redistill it anyway. So if you can do bench trials, that's the best. But this is a common thing that you will see, particularly in blended whiskeys, as well as brandies, traditional French brandies. Not so much adding the white spirit back, but sometimes adding in, let's say, it's particularly some things that are over-oaked. So there is I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. So in Cognac, sometimes what will happen, especially with high-end Cognacs, which is a great brandy, they'll start their blending process, and maybe that process doesn't have quite as much oak as they like. So what they'll often have in what they call their paradisia, which is the inner cellar of the cellar, where they've got all these what were in old barrel cognacs that set for many, many decades sometimes. They pull those out and they put them into demijohns or carboys. Now this stuff of its own accord is way over oaked, but in very small doses, added back into the brandy, into the blend that they've made as a dosage to raise the oak or maybe raise the mouthfeel, and I'm talking very small doses, is very common. You'll run into this sometimes with blended Scotch whiskeys too. There's going to be some Scotch whiskeys, they go into once used bourbon barrels quite often, and sometimes those barrels can be kind of light on the maturation. Not so much a maturation. The maturation is just fine. It's the extraction of oak. So sometimes they'll use something with some darker color to it and some heavier oak to it. And I suspect sometimes they go the wrong direction too and they get way over oaked. Well, then now you got to start pulling back. Well, maybe now it's time to use a, you know, in Scotch whiskey in particular, maybe now it's time to use a grain whiskey off of a coffee column still and lighten this up a little bit and make it a little bit more, you know, light on its feet, so to speak. So yeah, those are common things that distillers do quite a bit. Blending is a very big part of, you know, running a craft distillery or a large distillery, one way or the other. You know, not all distillers make great blenders, and not all great blenders make good distillers, and quite often in the bigger operations they are not the same person. But you got to start somewhere and you got to learn, right? And with craft distilling in particular, for any of you who decide to move from the art of home distillation into a legal distilling situation, a lot of that stuff's going to fall on your shoulders. So the more of those skills you can develop, the better off you are. And I would say to you guys, hey, play around with that stuff, right? Maybe even make some oak extracts on purpose that are over oaked in small amounts, you know, 10, 15, 20 milliliters here or there, that you can even maybe take some of that white spirit as a base. Instead of putting chips on everything, maybe you just make those oak extracts and you add a little bit of that oak extract back in instead of going the opposite direction and trying to dilute back down. Something to think about, something to play with. And I know you guys are probably like I am. You got about 1,000,001 projects on the board, not enough time to get to all of them, but there's always time for another one, right? We'll make time for it because we love what we do. And other people love what we do. We got to keep it going. So I hope that answers your question. As always, guys, thanks. I love you very much. Hey, listen, new subscribers, thank you so much for joining this channel. And the people who came over here from Still It, man, I can't thank Jesse enough. You know, the other accounts that are here on YouTube that have been kind of following me and writing as well, I follow all of you guys. At lunch, at work, lunchtime at work, that's education time for me. I'm eating lunch and I'm watching all these distillation channels because I learn something from every one of you pretty much every time you put up a video. Or I look at something differently than I ordinarily would. And even if it's something that I wouldn't try, I'd always look at it and go, huh, is there something there that I can apply to what I do and what I've learned? So I do appreciate y'all. Thank you very much. Love you. Later.